Hello, and welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Show.
That's right. I am Ryan.
I am Eric.
And we are real life brothers.
It's
who
true.
Work in the data and analytics industry. And have we got a good one for you today, folks?
Sure we do. And I don't know who you're, but LinkedIn user. Yes, we were a minute or two late, but we are here. So,
yeah. So, Eric, what do we got on deck today?
I think we've got a really cool one. We're talking to Ryan and Paul from Zenlytic, and they're going to talk about AI meets BI, LLM meets BI. You know, how can you use AI to augment generation of a semantic layer? Because we talk about semantic layers so much. I think it's just going to be a really cool show, and we've got the Datamon to show off, so that should be cool.
Yeah, I think before one of the things these guys gave me the single coolest piece of conference swag I have ever received in my life. And it's this, right? Focus. There we go. Sort of. This is what we call a Datamon card. So you can see mine here. Rayando, Super Data Blast, and Make Data Good as my skills. Mm-hmm. This was the biggest hit at the DBT Coalesce conference you could possibly imagine. Like, their booth was swarmed by people trying to get Datamon cards because they're so freaking awesome. And so we are going to be giving one of these away, of course, a digital version of it that you can print in today's show. We're going to be raffling one off. You can enter that raffle by typing hashtag Datamon, all one word, Datamon, into the chat. That will enter you into the raffle as we go through this. So make sure you do that, because these are awesome. And we'll talk to them a little bit about how they made them on today's show too. But before we bring Ryan and Paul on, we of course need to start off with a little bit of business. Meet the Super Data Brothers this upcoming January 27th, 2024 in Austin at Data Day, Texas. This is just our absolute favorite data conference. Why is that, Eric?
Well, because first of all, it's one day, so it doesn't take up too much of your time, and because it's not like a vendor focused conference. So you're not just talking about DBT. You're not just talking about whatever it may be, IBM, right? And so it's not vendor focused. And there are vendors there, but like the panels that you go to, they're not sales pitches. They're like actual interesting data information. And that's actually where me and Ryan got our start on this show. So it's a cool show. It's a cool conference. And so I suggest you check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a blast there. It's really sweet. And if you use code hashtag Super Data Brothers, all one word, when you register for Data Day Texas, you will get 20% off the cost of the conference. So make sure you check that out.
I don't think it's hashtag. Brothers. I think it's just Super Data Brothers.
Correct. It's just Super Data Brothers. Okay. And also, we got to thank today's sponsor, Digital Hive. Digital Hive is our top analytics catalog. What is an analytics catalog, you ask? You're probably used to the idea of a data catalog, which is cataloging your tables and physical data assets. And analytics catalog does the same thing, except it does it for the things that your end users actually use, meaning the reports, dashboards, visualizations, all that good stuff across multiple BI tools. What Digital Hive does is it brings it all into one place, makes it searchable, and even above and beyond that, makes it so that you can create new assets out of the best parts from all of your BI tools. What I mean by that is you can take a chart here, graph there, bring them together, one from Tableau, one from Power BI, bring them together in a new dashboard, put layer filters on top that will filter that content to really, and this is a big problem. I was talking to a huge company yesterday where what they really wanted to talk to us about was one, semantic layer, and two, I've got so many BI tools, I've got so many users doing so many different things, and it's just total chaos. This will help bring order to the chaos by giving you a single access point to find all of that stuff. So check it out, digitalhive.com, scan the QR code to learn more. And then, we just had to highlight this. This is, of course, the high definition image. You can enter to win one of these made personalized for you by typing hashtag Datamon into the chat. That will put you into the drawing to win. It's all one word, Datamon. This is just the coolest damn thing. I brought this home. My kids freaked out. I played Pokemon cards with my daughter. She was just blown away. She thinks I'm some kind of superhero now. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, are we ready to bring on our guests? Or
yeah, let's bring them on.
We're talking about the Datamon. Let's bring on the people who made it so we can talk about it.
All right. So Ryan and Paul, welcome to the Super Data Show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, gents. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you guys on. So, you guys, of course, are the founder of founders of Zenlytic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Zenlytic is the world's first self-serve BI tool, which is a bold claim, right?
It is.
So, BI tools have been saying that they're self-serve for a while, but I think our belief on what self-serve is a little bit different from what everyone else has said before. Before, people have been like, hey, we're going to make this new tool that you have to learn easier for you to use. That's not actually self-service. Self-service has to work the way that humans already work for it to actually be self-service. And that's conversations. That's back and forth. That's, hey, I need this thing. Okay, I don't quite have what you asked for, but I have these things that are pretty similar that other people use. Does that work? Yeah, okay, can you show me those? Here you go. There's a back and forth component. And that's what we're trying to do with Zoe, our chatbot.
Yeah, and Paul is the CTO of the business. He's kind of the architect of the product. I'm the chief light keeper on her. And even though we're not actually brothers, Paul is like a brother to me in spirit. So we've got two sets of brothers on. And one quick point of housekeeping, by the way, you mentioned we're going to raffle off a Datamon card. We're super excited for that. We're going to do a physical one though. We're not just talking digital. We'll send you the real card.
Nice.
Yeah. So
nice.
Again, all you gotta do is put hashtag Datamon in the chat.
That's right.
No one's done it yet, so if you do it, you might win.
You got a real high chance of winning right now if you get hashtag Datamon in the chat for a physical Datamon card, your very own personalized.
And this is based on you, right? This is based on your LinkedIn profile.
Let's talk about what the people win here for a second, so they truly understand what is it that we're giving away and why is it so amazing.
Yeah, so the Datamon cards are just a fun thing we thought we'd love to do to give back to the data community. What these are is they are completely generated by AI. So the image is actually based off of your LinkedIn profile picture. All of the copy is based off of your LinkedIn profile. We can feed the AI some custom recommendations. And I mentioned Super Data Brothers for yours, Ryan, and you see it defeats Koopas and things like that. So we feed that all into an AI. An LLM writes the copy. An image generation AI makes the Datamon image itself, and then a card comes inside. And then we have our own little Zenlytic print shop that makes these things, and they come with the card and a little collectible case and a little stand so you can keep it on your desk. And they're just super fun. Yeah, we wanted to do it just because it's something we thought the data community would like, and it turns out they really, really love it.
It's cool.
Yeah, people looking for these things everywhere, and lots and lots of interest, and everyone wants to get one of these cards. So we're really excited to actually just sort of participate and give back to the community.
So for the image, I'm just curious because I've played with this stuff a little bit. Are you using like stable diffusion or like for it or?
Yeah. So these images, it's actually funny. There's a few choices. We can use open source stable diffusion algorithms. We can use Dolly 3 now, which actually wasn't available when we started doing this project. Or we can use Midjourney. And for most of them, we actually use Midjourney because it gives the coolest looking images.
Yeah.
It's kind of a style choice. But the really neat thing about this for me, the thing that I get most excited about, this as a project, is that this was literally not possible to do with last year's Coalesce, right? We did not have the technology. Totally. And people talk about platform shifts and unlocking new things, and it always kind of feels like an abstract thing. But if we had decided to do this last year, we would have had to have an army of artists or something sitting there, hand drawing Datamons, either digitally or painting them or something, and like we could have made 10 Datamons, right? And like we've literally unlocked these new capabilities in that time period between the two coalesces, and that just gets me so excited. I think we're going to see that a lot of that happening over the coming year as more of these AI apps, come to market and become productionized.
Yeah, it's truly ridiculous how quickly this has advanced and how cool it's gotten. So Zenlytic kind of takes, is really about applying, these types of technologies to business intelligence to make something that end users can actually interact with. Let me start by asking you guys, were you already clued into all this, before ChatGPT dropped, or was it like that morning you called one another and said, "Let's found a company"? Like what's the story there?
So the background is actually that Ryan and I studied this in grad school, which is where we met. So we both went to Harvard for technical grad school, where we studied a lot of the transformer models right when they came out. Because when we were in grad school, that was when the first transformer paper came out, and that kind of revolutionized like what was possible. So in early versions of Zenlytic, we actually use these sort of precursor models. So like a good example is Google's BERT model that they had, that was at the time a transformer based language model, but it wasn't a large language model the way we think of them now. It was sort of a small language model, and then we've just effectively followed the trajectory of these models. And I've got to say, even as someone who's very clued into this space, it was still mind-blowing, the difference and just the speed at which like ChatGPT got just incredible, like mind-blowing. So much better than anything else that had existed before. So that was sort of like, you would see this consistent progression, of increasing capabilities, and then all of a sudden it was just like tail. Just insane.
I want to say that we're like visionaries or something like that, but like we've always been optimistic about the capabilities, but we were both blown away by how fast the technology is changing.
Yeah. What is it, do you think, with Chat? Like what was the key to that sudden step change? Like what was it that they did there that allowed that, do you think?
There is, if you listen to Sam Altman talk about this, there's, he says there's like 1,000 little things. So those are his words. I would say the two ones that strike me as the biggest is they just scaled up these transformers in a way that no one had done before. And that unlocked capabilities that were kind of emergent at that level of training and that scale that just hadn't been seen before. That's one component. The other component that I think is really, really important is when they first had GPT-3, it was incredibly capable. People like us who, can, run these things, via an API, were able to be like, oh, this is incredible. This is amazing. Most of the world is not going to, install some SDK and like run, things via an API. When they launched the ChatGPT interface, it made it accessible to everybody in the world in a way that it was never before. So now you go into a coffee shop and there's kids doing their homework. There's someone drafting a PowerPoint. Everyone's got a ChatGPT window open. Both because the actual capability of the model is way better because they scaled up the training, but also because the interface is now accessible to people who, aren't going to learn how to install CUDA drivers or, interface via an API.
Yeah, the rumor actually has it that, so before there was ChatGPT, OpenAI had this thing called the OpenAI Playground, where you could actually play around with the language models and do stuff with it. And it was kind of buried. It was actually like, 4 levels deep in their, admin.openai thing. But that they saw that blowing up, and to their surprise, they didn't expect it to be as popular as it was either. But they saw people using that for chat, and it wasn't fully baked or anything like that. But even then, people were getting excited about it, and that's what inspired the creation of ChatGPT. The thing that I actually think is super cool about this is that, it just so happens that OpenAI also built ChatGPT in addition to building 3.5. They did a couple of architectural changes not long before that. The biggest one is RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, which does make chat a lot better. But a solid majority of the tech to build a really great chat interface was just hiding in plain sight for 8 months between when GPT-3 was launched and when ChatGPT came out. Like anyone could have built that, but nobody did. which I think about a lot, right? Which is so funny. And then OpenAI finally went and built their own, and it changed the universe basically. So yeah, it's just sometimes these things are just sitting in plain sight when there's when the technology presents an opportunity, you just got to go and grab it, I guess.
So you guys have a background in this technology. We were following developments as they happened. So it was not a situation of, you logged into GPT 3.5 that morning and said, holy shit, we got to change what we're doing. Why did you choose to apply your skills in this area to business intelligence and analytics? What was it that made you think, okay, these two things need to collide?
So I think the thing is that Ryan and I are both, very excited about data in general and data technology. I think that the thing is when we think about AI, it represents a massive platform shift. Looker was the BI tool that rode the previous platform shift. They had a great exit to Google, built a fantastic company and a great product on technology that wasn't possible beforehand, right? Like you couldn't have built Looker on SQL Server. It wasn't possible. You needed like BigQuery or Snowflake to make Looker actually great. Likewise with us, there's going to be a whole generation of SaaS tools across all different traditional what you think about as SaaS products that take advantage of this platform shift the way Looker took advantage of Snowflake. And that's what gets me really excited, is that this isn't just like someone's going to bolt on a chatbot to an existing BI tool the way Tableau would bolt on more powerful capabilities due to the underlying databases getting faster. It's like this is revolutionary. This is changing like what's actually possible in a way that we haven't seen in data technology. So that platform shift is what gets me most excited, and the ability to make these capabilities accessible to people who previously would have to email someone and wait a week or two to get something back.
The interesting thing is we were actually, we were building the world's first self-serve BI tool before the LLM revolution happened. We raised our first we raised our build a product round during the pandemic, and we had a lot of those pieces sort of in place when the technology started to really advance quickly. We had always put some language capabilities in with those early models. Fun fact, by the way, our AI agent, Zoe, is named Zoe because she's a Sesame Street character. And that's kind of an homage to the original models. They were all named after Sesame Street characters. There was Bert, and there was Ernie, and there was Big Bird, and there was Elmo. So we said, Zoe has to be it. And that's just kind of like a nod to the dawn of the early days of LLMs. Anyways, we'd always had some capabilities put in. But as soon as this stuff started to accelerate, yes, there was a phone call, the December night or whatever it is, about a year ago when GPT 3.5 launched. And we said, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity. The big thing that we sort of incorporated then, the big change we made was moving from sort of a single question into a chat-based paradigm. So like a lot of the stuff, interesting, if a lot of the tools now have a thing where you can write an LLM query in a single line. Our goal is to replace an ad hoc data request with an analyst, and those never take a single email, right? So we think it's important to actually have that chat as a capability. And then that allows you to clarify and go back and forth and drill and, iterate. And you can talk to it the same way you talk to a human. And that felt really, really powerful for us. So as soon as the 3.5 launch happened, we said, all right, this is really, really important. We had this sort of mostly built BI tool that was still pretty flexible and malleable. So we said, we're going to integrate this in every possible way into this tool.
Yeah, that's man, talk about good timing. What's so every you bring up like every BI tool is and you look at them, they're all kind of doing exactly what you said, which is like, okay, how can we bolt on some sort of like chatbot window on top of a dashboard as a way to kind of jump into this? What challenges do you see like with that? Is that going to work? And I'm gonna guess you're gonna say no. So why not?
So I'll say that it will work. It will work fine for the analyst. The analyst who already knows the dashboard they need to be on, already knows like what they're trying to look at, and needs to like change a plot type, really quickly. It's going to accelerate that person. It's going to be great for that analyst persona. but it doesn't change the actual self-service, aspect. Like, people don't get stuck in self-service when they're, changing from a line chart to a bar chart. People get stuck in self-service when they see a wall of 300 dashboards and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to email, Ryan. On
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Or
when
there's,
they,
there's,
query
there's
pops up.
17 reports labeled quarterly report. I'm not.
exactly. They're just like, you know what? I'm out. Like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
email someone. And people get stuck when they see, an Explorer with like 5 different metrics. And they're like, wait a minute. When we recognize revenue, do we use like the process that, the created at, the like, fulfill that? Like, you know what? I'm just gonna email somebody. So it's like you need to actually change the interface. You need to make it feel like a conversation where you don't have to look at the 1,000 things. You let the AI, you let the model look at the 1,000 things. The model can incorporate all sorts of data that the person doesn't have. It can look at usage. It can look at, when the report was created, which reports are certified by the data team, like, which of the metrics are like the top ones. Like, this person asked this nuanced question, point them to, net revenue instead of gross. Like, models can incorporate all this context, which makes it actually easy for humans. If the humans have to sift through all the context and then use some AI to change a line chart to a bar chart, it's fine for analysts, but it doesn't change the game for self-service users.
Or I mean, put another way, the human has to understand the model's output, right? So like, if you look at some of the other alternatives, if you look at text to SQL, for instance, right? There will certainly be use cases for having an LM write SQL queries for you, but you're going to have to be able to understand and audit that SQL, and I think it's, if I use an LM to help me write a Python method, it's incredibly powerful, but I'm smart enough to be able to read that method and make sure that it works. If I ask them to, I don't know how to write, I don't know, Zig. So if I asked them to write a Zig method for me, I wouldn't be able to tell if it was like good or not, if it was going to do what it said it was going to do. I think that's also true for, LLMs that are generating SQL versus LLMs that are generating, self-serve outcomes here. And if you're an analyst, yes, you can absolutely get an LLM to go and write a bunch of SQL for you, and it'll save you a whole bunch of time, and then it's a co-pilot. The problem that we're more focused on is if you're a self-serve person that can't understand that SQL, and you need to have someone that replaces the analyst for you. That's actually a much harder problem, it turns out, and we had to bolt on a whole bunch of stuff, including the semantic layer became interestingly. I mean, it's something that both Paul and I have believed in for a long time as data nerds, and it's gaining a lot of momentum, which I think is great. It also happens to be an important piece of that puzzle for getting LLMs to work effectively, right? Take out the SQL generation from this stochastic, random number generator and put it into a compiler where you can actually make it work properly. Include a, it encodes tons and tons of information, right? So like, there's no clearer picture of how an organization thinks and uses data than its semantic layer.
Yeah.
And even stuff like description fields, which we thought were going to be useful for humans, actually provide a huge amount of context for the LLM to like do its job better. So the overlap of those two, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was talking to an analyst at a very large advisory firm that will remain unnamed yesterday, and I was making this very point about semantic layers and trying to tell them, like, look, there's this problem that a lot of traditional BI tools have insofar as like the generation of BI tools that were developed, not developed, but really rose up in, say, the 2010s, with the exception of Looker, which obviously does have a semantic layer. They all took in order to increase data analyst throughput, they removed the semantic layer that had been in place in like the Cognos business object days, because it back then especially, took forever to build. And so they said, look, we're going to cut this piece out. And now you've got the situation, and I was talking to the analyst about this because they didn't, I think, see this distinction or see that it was important. But the point I made was like, look, if I've got 10,000 Tableau hyperfiles uploaded in Tableau, and 1,700 of them have revenue in it, which is the canonical revenue? Which is the right one? When I ask the LLM a question, where should it go to find that, right? And the in-dashboard experience, okay, it makes sense because the dashboard's tied to this hyperfile, and we bound it within that. But once you leave that and you say, no, I don't want to ask a question on this dashboard. I want to ask a question of my whole system, right? The traditional BI tools that don't have this semantic layer, I just don't know what they're going to do to adequately solve this problem, right?
Yeah, there's no roadmap to make that work in the same way that, like, without like re-architecting the entire tool. right? So it's like Tableau couldn't change their entire
Yeah.
architecture of how they index data in memory to take advantage of,
No.
being able to run a query on 100 billion rows by just pushing that query down to Snowflake. That's just a monster, task. You're basically rebuilding the product from the ground up. And
Yeah.
it's just too
Exactly.
much
So,
for
but-
the incumbents to do.
But you bring up a great point, Ryan, which is there are reasons not to use a semantic layer too, right? And when I think about, there's like that old saying where it's like strategy is what you say no to, right?
Yes.
And it's like, or the way that I like to exemplify that is like, if the opposite of your strategy is obvious, it's not a strategy, it's just the best practice, right? So like if you say your strategy is good customer service, like bad customer service is not obviously a strategy, right? Of course you can't do that. So you don't have a strategy, you just have something that you have to do, right? So semantic layer, you can look at both sides of the coin, right? And it's like when I think of the BI family tree, like the top branch is actually semantic native or not, right? And it's like the semantic native camp is like, Looker is the king of the hill or whatever, and the non-semantic native camp is Tableau. And we know the benefits of the semantic layer, but the trade-offs are what you mentioned, right? It takes a lot of work to build and maintain. It's we met entire teams of people who are writing tens of thousands of lines of LookML, right? And that's just that there's a huge amount of investment that goes into that. It takes time and reduces iteration speed. And as a semantic native tool, I can definitely feel jealous of Tableau, where someone can just go and drag a CSV on and suddenly they're making pie charts, right? That's what you alluded to actually in the show notes too, which is like one fun thing that we have released recently for Zenlytic is the self-deploying semantic layer, right?
Yeah.
And this is why we started talking about this, is how we originally got in touch. And it's not even the core thing that we do. I mean, it helps self-serve, but it also I think this is probably the biggest problem in the modern data stack, is not even the one that Paul and I are solving, self-serve. It's the problem of what was discussed at Coalesce this year. Is the problem of complexity, right? And we've kind of with this great powerful customization tools, and we can build these very, very unique data pipelines and semantic layers and everything, but it takes so much work that the amount of investment is actually very difficult. And I think that's probably the even biggest problem in the stack. So this is something that we think a lot about as a semantic layer native tool, and that's why we built this auto deploy thing. But it's pretty cool. Do we want to talk about that some more?
Yeah, I mean, let's get into that, right? I think
Yeah.
so those of you who watch the show regularly know that we often have vendors on. We normally don't we just talk. We normally don't do a demo during the show. But if you guys are ready and up for it, I think we wanted to actually see this, because it's just too
that's like when you first describe ChatGPT to your aunt, right?
Yeah.
Like she doesn't even know what you're talking about, and then you have it write a poem using her name and like what you tell the GPT about her, and she's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So seeing is believing, I suppose. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let's do it. Like,
right.
let me share my screen here, and we can see that.
So while Paul's teeing that up, the long and short of it is this is something that we think about a lot. And our main focus to date has been on the search use case, right? It's like building an AI analyst to replace those ad hoc data requests, and that's what we're mostly focused on. But one thing that we're excited about is that this tool lets you actually write the YAML to build that semantic layer in about 5 minutes instead of like months.
Yeah.
Yep. So here we're just going to do one table to keep things faster and easier, but you can do up to 6 tables at a time, just given like rate limits. And all you do is just select the table, and then you're like, hey, go and create this for me. And this is not instant. This is this is going to take like minute or two to kind of bake here. But what's happening under the hood is that we're going to that table, we're getting the info on the columns, on what's present in that table, and then we're passing that information to OpenAI, and it's able to look at everything in that table, look at how to define the semantic layer, and say, okay, so this would be a reasonable semantic layer. These would be reasonable joins. These would be reasonable metrics to define. Like this is stuff that makes sense, basically. And of course, that's not going to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't understand all the 10 years of history you have in your business, that the nuances in there. But it's a great starting point, so that you can go from I've got this table to I have everything defined and I can play with it, and then realize, oh, okay, well, I gotta tweak that and remove those, influencer orders that we send out, or change the way that we calculate that because of this other nuance in how we adjust things. So it gives you the ability to just get set up really fast, where you're talking like a couple minutes here, and then it lets you just get started, start playing around with it, start seeing what's possible, and then from there actually go tweak the definitions, and get things working exactly the way you want them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one really cool thing is it uses it can use just common sense context as well. So like if you include a Shopify order items table, for instance, from your warehouse, it will recognize that and be like, "Oh, this order items table. They probably want to have a total sales, which is the sum of value, and build that as a metric, as a measure in the semantic layer."
That's just crazy. That's awesome.
Gotcha. So is Zoe like a model you're running, or you said you're sending like an API request to OpenAI? Is that how you're doing it, or?
So this is going to OpenAI and using GPT-4.
Okay.
So it's grabbing all the table context, sending that into GPT-4, which is part of why it takes a really long time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like it's just sitting right here. But it'll go send that to GPT-4, get back the data model, and then stick that data model in context for you. And go ahead.
I was just kidding. It's really interesting to work with these models as well, and we've experimented with all of the usual suspects, I suppose, and the APIs, of course, like OpenAI and Anthropic and Bard, and all of those, as well as sort of building and fine tuning models, and they all have their own sort of trade-offs, I guess, right? So it's interesting. A single LLM call that you'll see in the app is usually about like half a dozen like API calls, basically. Some of them are optimized for speed, some are optimized for resolution and comprehension, and it's fun tech to. Well, it's actually terrible tech to work with. It's interesting tech to work with, but it's actually terrible because we're in the Wild West.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
We've had to build a bunch of our own tool set for evals and testing and things like that, and everyone's really just learning how to use these. It's a new paradigm for software, right? And it kind of it's really we're figuring it as we go, but it's a very cool set of tech to work with.
Like this question you've typed right here, I think is like the difference between that's really important for people to understand. Okay, I'll read it because what metrics can I ask about? Okay, is the difference between like a dashboard scoped chatbot and a chatbot that has an understanding, is hooked to a semantic layer and has an understanding of your data, your data assets as a whole. And like, it's just, this is the thing that gets me so exciting. Gets me so excited, like it does with you guys, right? Is the whole like, change this chart type A to chart type B is like that useful, very useful, right? But this is the type of thing where you're saying, I mean, it's your first day at a new job. You're a data analyst. It's your first day at a new job, or you're anybody. You don't have to be a data analyst, right? And it's like, hey, here's the system where you access the data, and to be able to come in and just ask it, like, well, what info's in here, or even pass it context. Like, this is my job title. What info do you have that might be interesting to me? Like that is so mind-blowing that that's even possible as someone who's been in BI for 12 years now.
And the converse is you can do it proactively too, right? So it's like, we'll have situations where someone will ask a question about Zoe, and she'll ask a question to Zoe and she'll answer it. Hey, what were our sales last quarter compared to the previous quarter before that, whatever. And it will answer the question. And then we can also surface, oh, by the way, though, you have existing data assets. Our sales dashboard is already showing this, and why don't you, do you want to jump into this dashboard instead? So like being able to proactively sort of surface that stuff is kind of a next generation as well.
So one question I have is, how are you packaging like the semantic information that you're sending to OpenAI? Because I think you have your open source semantic layer, right? How are you taking that? Like, what are you sending to the LLM so that it understands, like, oh, here are these joins, or this is what the metric information is like. So how are you packaging that?
So we actually are basically, there's a few components. The first one is that we'll actually go into the semantic layer to do search to effectively, you know, you can't pass the entire semantic layer every
Yeah,
time to
yeah.
the LLM. It will go grab that and then take that, stick that in the LLM, find
Gotcha.
the right context that makes sense. And then the LLM is able to look at all that context and say, hey, okay, how should I like construct this query, basically? And then, yeah, that's how that works.
Gotcha. So is
Yeah.
it when it's searching the model or the semantic layer, is it like keyword search? Or are you like generating embeddings to like match, like to
So
to
it
pull
actually
what
has
you're
to be
looking for?
both.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's pretty easy if you have a question like this one, like the, you know, what metrics can I ask about? Here it gave you a gigantic overview, which takes a really long time to generate.
Oh, I don't think we have the.
Nope, there we
oh,
go. Now we can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's that what metrics can I ask about question. This one takes a
Yeah.
really long time to generate because it's generating like a lot of tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's giving you sort of like, you know, a canonical view of everything that's happening. And then from here, you can, you know, say, okay, well, we've got gross revenue, you know, product sales and shipping. You know, let's look at that. So, you know, show me.
It's worthwhile noting that this was generated by the semantic layer generator as well. So like this is happening live. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is. I mean, every demo, it's like a law of nature that something has to take longer than normal,
Yeah.
or you know, not
Yeah.
render. So like,
Yeah.
no worries about that. I've done
Yeah.
hundreds of demos of BI tools over the years, and something always is not quite right.
Yeah.
I used to be a VC, and the curse of the demo is real.
Yeah, it's for real. But I mean, even the presentation here, like just like this is a numbered list with bolded headlines telling you what, you know,
Yeah.
fields or metrics are available to you. And you compare this to, you know, a GUI only BI tool where what you're going to be doing in order to view the available metrics is like most of them have no view where you can see the available metrics all in one place, right? The closest you can come, of course, is you pop open the dashboard builder or visualization editor, and there's some list of fields on the left-hand side of the screen, and like that's how you can find what's available.
Yeah, and the other important thing too is that that's semantically understanding, right? So Paul asked about all metrics, but we can just say, hey, listen, I'm running a new marketing campaign. What metrics are relevant for that? And just surface the relevant stuff semantically.
I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then from here, that process for us is like you can ask about, you know, what you can ask about, which is really important.
Yeah.
Because then you help filter those like list of 1,000 things down to like a manageable list. And then from that manageable list, you can say, oh, okay, well, you know, I need to see, you know, like how my gross revenue is doing, basically. You can just ask that, and then we're going to be able to say, you know, the model will explain its reasoning to you and say, okay, you know, it's using this. I'm going to, you know, set this time period to the last month. And then you're able to see, you know, everything that's going on in kind of the way you expect. You're able to say, okay, you know, our Facebook channel here is dipping down. Everything else looks pretty strong though.
Yeah.
This is also highly relevant to our discussion around, you know, generating SQL versus something that a self-serve user can understand. So like, you notice we don't have a giant SQL query saying, hey, here's what your SQL query is. We say, listen, we're showing you total gross revenue, you know, by marketing channel daily between these dates. And that's something that the average user can audit, and there's clarity into what the model's doing.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I guess if you're an analyst, you could probably get a big SQL query and sort of grok through it. But this lets, you know, the non-technical user also navigate that data.
Yeah. And our goal is to produce something like this where the user can audit whether it is what they want or not.
Mhm.
Because you can, you know, hover over this, see the description, make sure that this is actually doing what you expect. And you can audit that and see if it is what you wanted or not. Where if we're just generating SQL under the hood, not talking about concepts that the end users, like the self-serve users, know about, then that's something where they have to, you know, they can't audit it. They can't look at the SQL and say, oh, okay, that's, you know, that's how we decided to do gross revenue, including shipping. Here, we're talking about concepts that the end users know about, and they're able to, you know, audit this and determine if it's actually what they want.
Yeah. And the other important thing too is that, you know, because you're using the semantic layer is what happens between that got it running a plot that has and the plot, and you can have confidence that that SQL is correct. If you have an LLM writing the SQL, so the, you know, the evaluation metric for that is a data set called Spider, and the state of the art for generating SQL with an LLM is about 85%, give or take. You know, it's kind of going slowly up. But 85% accuracy is not sufficient for a BI tool. If this decided to randomly hallucinate what that gross revenue was 1 time out of 7, that would probably be insufficient. When you use the semantic layer, you're compiling it in deterministic technology, right? It's old school computing tech. There's no LLM randomness in it. And I guess one of the fun learnings that we've had in our journey building this is that our objective is actually to only use the LLM when you've exhausted all of the traditional computing options. So it should be a system of last resort, not first resort. And I think the right LLM app, it kind of looks like there's a giant blob of software with little tiny bits of LLMs put inside. And I think a lot of people are trying to wrap their software in an LLM, which I think is actually not the right approach.
That's fascinating. So just to linger on that point for a second, because I think it answers the most obvious question I'm sure you guys get constantly, which is like, well, how can I prevent this from hallucinating? How do I know this is right? I read, you're talking to some executive and he's like, well, I read in the online all the time that these things just make shit up. So like, how do I know this isn't just making shit up?
Yep, that's where the semantic layer becomes absolutely crucial. Because if you ask about something that doesn't exist, or you ask about something specific that does, the LLM is either going to see it in the semantic layer and say, okay, I'm going to use that one. In which case, it's using your existing definition that your data team's been able to QA. They're confident it's right, and then I think the other version, it's not going to make something up and try to like guess at a new definition. It's going to tell you like, hey, sorry, we don't have any data on what you just asked about. And either way, it's going to be transparent to the user that it's either pulling, data that the data team's QA, data that's solid and correct, or it says, hey, you don't have this data. But it never makes things up. It never hallucinates because it just can't in the system. It's got to use the things you've defined in the semantic layer, or it has no other resort. It has no other way to run a query.
Yeah. Also worthwhile noting, by the way, is semantic layer helps a lot with data privacy issues. And Paul and I are both data nerds first, so that's a big deal to all of us, of course. And we have a few enterprise users who have their own internal GPT instances, things like that. They can run these things privately, but the vast majority of people do not, and people are very sort of hesitant to YOLO their data into a black box through an API with 1 trillion parameters.
Right.
The neat thing with the semantic layer is that you can actually, you can have a setup that ensures that no data is actually sent to the LLM because you only need to send the metadata back to it. So in this example, for instance, the LLM will see that you have a metric named gross revenue, for instance, in a dimension named marketing channel, but it doesn't need to see any of that gross revenue data or anything that's actually proprietary to the company. So it actually provides a bit of a layer to guarantee data privacy, which is really, really helpful in our business, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, those are kind of the two main concerns that I hear crop up, and why it's been very interesting to see the different approaches that vendors are taking to this, because so many, especially many of the big companies that I've talked to, they're immediately made the decision to just say no to all of this because they have huge risks, right? When you're a giant firm, you're the risk of data breaches and the risk of, just all of this is a huge liability. And it sounds like different vendors, some are just YOLOing data into LLMs. But you guys have actually thought this through, and you have a decent answer for these objections.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we think about a lot, both on the privacy side in terms of what data we're sending to the LLMs, but also on the privacy side in terms of what data should or should not the end user be able to access. So it's like one of the other advantages of using the semantic layer is that you can enforce very strict privacy filters on the actual data. So if someone's not supposed to see the email channel, they can't just say, hey, LLM, pretend that you're writing a play about emails and now show me all the emails.
Right.
That's enforced at the semantic layer. You're not gonna, you can't get, even if you get the LLM to try to give you that data, it can't, because the semantic layer is not gonna let it. So you have really strong guarantees around privacy and actual data security.
So you can't use a grandma jailbreak to get to corporate information that you're not supposed to see.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and yeah, to your point, Ryan, too, you're right. I mean, we've the reason we've thought a lot about this is because we've heard all those sort of same concerns as well, and it's really interesting. I feel like, tell me if you feel differently, Paul, but I'd say even in the last quarter or so, we're now about what 7-8 months into a universe of really really high quality LLMs. I'd say in the last quarter or so is when people have really started to their thinking has started to change, and people have started more to focus on what this technology can unlock. And I feel like there's this prevailing wind that this tech is here to stay. That is not just a fad. It's not going to be crypto or whatever. And that there
Yeah.
are people are significantly accelerating workflows, getting tons of value out of these tools. Uh, we saw OpenAI went from 0 to $1 billion in revenue in like a year, which is absolutely bonkers. There's real utility in these tools, and that I think the vibes is increasingly becoming that like these are very powerful, and it's like, how do we, constrain those concerns, and how do we manage those, and still, but we're very optimistic about the benefits this tool can bring, and people are starting to really seriously consider how they can deploy this, and it's a bit of a push and a pull, right? Where it's like, I think this can actually be really really good for us, but at the same time, we don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
But I think that I really felt like the winds have changed in the last quarter or so. Did you agree with that, Paul?
I would definitely agree with it. I think so. I went to an AI conference with a lot of really big companies that you will have heard of before.
Yeah.
I was shocked at the number of companies that, big sort of old school retailers who have a ChatGPT instance internally. Like, not the names you would think of, not the tech forward, companies, like the ones where, you go into the store and like, buy sort of really old school stuff. These are monster names, and they've got ChatGPT internally, and a lot of them do. I was really surprised, almost conversely, with how many are leaning in, and are trying to look at it elsewhere. It's something that really is different from sort of previous hype cycles, because it's useful in a way that even the big giants who normally don't jump at brand new technology are actually using this and getting a lot of value out of it internally.
That's awesome to hear, because I agree. Like, this is not a fad. It is not, you go back to 2017. I don't know what people were envisioning, like McDonald's would put every shake on the blockchain or something. But
Right.
like, this is totally different. I want to ask a question about data analysts and their reaction to this. But first, the audience has been unusually quiet today, which is weird to me, because the conversation is like blowing my mind. But
I think there might be like LinkedIn issues.
There was a
something.
little bit of a
'Cause
LinkedIn integration issue, but it's live on
Mhm.
LinkedIn now. And so
Yeah.
if we are giving away, for those of you who are interested, here you can see the
There we go.
right so Zenlytic has been kind enough to offer to create for our audience a Datamon. The winner, we're going to do a raffle to get your very own real life Datamon card. It looks like this. Here you can see the
Sent to
digital
you.
version and the real version. This will be sent to you. This is generated by AI, scrapes your LinkedIn, and translates your real work persona into a Pokemon. Is what it does. This is the coolest thing I have practically ever seen. And this is your chance to win one by typing in #Datamon into the chat, all one word, DATAMON. Nobody has entered. So if you enter right now,
There's
you
a
are
chance.
guaranteed to win.
Uh-huh.
If nobody else does. So go ahead and type that into the chat. And of course, if you have any questions, the whole reason we do this show live is to get your questions answered. So there we go. We've got an entry.
There we go.
Odds are looking good for Michael Webb.
Yeah.
Your odds are looking really good right now.
Real good, man. Oh, no, we've got
your
a
odds just
second one
slashed
for
in half.
Rory.
Rory Cornelius. All right. Okay. It's a 50-50. We've got a third one. I can't see an integration, but
LinkedIn user is that's the painful thing about. But we only have one LinkedIn user right now, so by default, I can go on LinkedIn and check.
Plus, if we look at the LinkedIn comments, I think we can see.
Yeah, we'll figure out who LinkedIn user
Yeah.
is, unless more than one LinkedIn user enters the raffle, and then we might have a problem.
We'll figure it out. Y'all know where to find me after the show. We'll make sure it works out.
All right.
Yeah.
So So this kind of begs a second question. We've talked about security. We've talked about hallucination or accuracy of results, and you guys have awesome answers to that. Like, you've clearly thought it out. What about the concern that a data analyst or a BI person might have that, like, hey, this is doing my job for me, and in 2 years I'm going to be unemployed? Like, how do you? What would you say to that person?
I would say you're not actually going to be unemployed, that the job's going to change. That the thing that will change in my view is that instead of trying to grind through answering a lot of these questions, the analyst job is going to move to documenting the tribal knowledge and the like nuance of the business and defining that for the LLM to use. So, you're going to have, like, there's always going to be nuance that the LLMs won't understand because they've been trained on a bunch of SQL, not on the specific problem that your business has. So, you have a production database that has some nuances to it that you need to, make a lot of adjustments before you can calculate something that seems simple correctly. The data analyst is still going to have to own that. They're going to have to, learn those nuances, figure out what's going on, calculate these things correctly, show the LLM how to use that. So it'll basically be writing a lot of documentation, writing a lot of definitions. And then the LLM will be the one playing, Mad Libs, like combining all the different metrics with the different filters people ask about, doing some really, amazing stuff with that data that it pulls. But you're still going to need the data analyst to effectively tell the LLM about the context of the business and the business's data, and how the data has changed, grown, nuances, different ways to use different things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a higher leverage use of your time, right? It's a powerful tool for you. And like, I guess, when I think about like, what are the main jobs of data people, I think of 3 big buckets. The first is like building and maintaining the tools, the pipelines, the BI tools, the consumption, whatever, delivering those to the team. The second is the ad hoc data requests, right? The quick data pulls. And the third is what the bucket into like, sort of like, higher difficulty analytics. This is running experiments, and this is stuff that requires statistical rigor, and this is stuff that requires understanding of how data works, and like the harder stuff than the quick data pulls. And in my experience, data folks loved it. In my personal experience, I felt like the one thing that I don't want to do in that stack is the middle one, which is the data pulls, and those ones take up most of the time.
We're just writing SQL and sending and just pulling like, here you go, here's that list you asked for.
Right. Yeah. Like
tomorrow you get another one.
Yeah. If I have to join this table together and filter out these nulls again for like the 10th time, like forget it. So like, yeah. So like, if we can get rid of that middle bucket, or at least alleviate a big chunk of that middle bucket, I don't think you'll ever get rid of it. Then you can spend more time on the stuff that matters. Right. And in particular, like, the highest value stuff is the stuff that takes human expertise. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think a great example of this, actually, when GPT-4 first came out, I was trying to impress my wife with it. And she's also an entrepreneur, and I had it write some marketing tags for her, like, her Facebook ads. And I was like, here, look. And I had GPT-4 write these tags, and I said, write me 10 tags. And I looked at them and I was like, these are really, really good. This is amazing. And I was really impressed. And so I showed it to my wife, and I said, look, it wrote these things for you instantly. Can you believe this? And she said that she's like, this algorithm clearly doesn't understand my user. And even though I thought they looked good, her experience of having spent, 7 years, whatever, in this industry, and, being an expert in her industry, gave her a much different viewpoint than what the model outputted. Right. And like, I still think that for a long time in the foreseeable future, the winner is going to be, you have human domain expertise, human judgment, combined with just a really, really fat pipe to data. And the AI can help with that fat pipe and providing that data and helping make sense of it. But those two things together are going to be way more powerful than either one of them on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, it's almost like you have a 3-year-old who's incredible at math in some ways, like, and you need to, like the 3-year-old knows how to write SQL and Python, but it has no idea why. And you need to like be the shepherd in a way.
Yeah. I like it. It feels like having an intern, a really, really good, hardworking, always working, never sleeping intern.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be. I think that the future is bright. Actually, as a fun fact, one of the oldest applications of AI is chess. Right.
Yeah.
Like one of the early things where the computers beat the humans was chess. And even today, the best player, as far as I know, is actually, it's called a centaur. It's like a human and a really good chess algorithm playing together can beat either like a computer or a human, which is actually third now, unfortunately. But the two together is actually very, very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So overall, like have you seen a huge uptick in interest? I mean, especially since GPT kind of went public, and like, how's the adoption of this approach going?
So I think the interest is crazy because I think before when you would pitch someone on, hey, you have chatbot for your data, everyone's kind of like, yeah, been there, done that.
Right.
Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, like the query builders stuff that like never
Yeah,
was
exactly.
really
They're
useful
like,
to anyone.
Yeah. Right. Actually,
what?
we uninstalled ThoughtSpot, so please. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly the same thing. They're like, so is this like ThoughtSpot? Because that's not really doing anything for us.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, this is different. Like, this is ChatGPT for your data. And people are like, oh, I've used ChatGPT. That stuff is crazy. If I could use this instead of talking to my analyst, it's like a mental shift, basically. They go from default thinking, there is no chance this thing works. And then if it works, they're like, wow, that's insane. To like thinking, wow, this really could work. And then that leads to a different perspective where it's like, you're willing to say, hey, let's try it out. Okay, it picked the wrong thing here. Let me write down a description and point it in the right direction because I believe that it will work. So, that gives people what they need because it starts out intern level, right? It starts out where it's just looking at your semantic layer and saying, hey, I just picked this thing. Doing exactly what an intern would do, which means it's sometimes going to make mistakes. But as you go, you can write down, the same way you would for an intern, just like, hey, pointers, use this in these kind of scenarios, use this other one in these other scenarios. And it will just learn those rules and, roll with them. So it's overall, I'd say people believe it will work in a way that they did not before ChatGPT came out.
Yeah, I think the magnitude of the change in capabilities is so big that people it's taking time for people to get their heads around it, and people are starting to come around to that now, where it's like, wow, this is really actually very powerful. It's also a very, very different way of interacting, with computers than we're used to. So
Yeah,
those two things together have taken time. I think that people are warming up, and actually, I think the market is starting to catch up too. So like, it takes 6 to 12 months to make a really high quality MVP of a product, right? And we just said that GPT-4 is like 7 months old now or something like that. So I think that we're going to start seeing a lot of the really effective tools that incorporate this tech come into market over the course of the next 6 months, and not just in data. I mean, in all software verticals, there's really big chances to do new stuff. I think we're going to start to see those come online, and people are really going to see what the capabilities of these tools can do at the application layer. And I think we're going to just see that sort of excitement and adoption continue to accelerate.
Oh, Ryan.
We blew his
sound,
mind
brother.
so much he turned the mic off.
See, what happens is I get too excited, and then I accidentally. It's got a mute button right on top. I accidentally hit it. No, I was just saying, like, these are just crazy times to be working in the data industry, and the stuff you guys are doing is so exciting. We're at the top of the hour. We got to do the raffle. So I don't know, Eric, if you have, because I got to share my screen on this raffle thing. So if there's any quick question you want to get in while I sort through this, go for it. But we'll do the raffle in just a second.
Sure. So the demo, just a quick question about the demo. So the demo was like chatting with a semantic layer that exists. Like you mentioned, the tool can also like generate a semantic layer, right? But I don't think we demoed that, right?
Well, that's right here. Let me show that because
I'm thinking is like, because
for a while.
In my day job, I still like develop semantic layers and reports. So it's like, if I can, do it more quickly or teach someone to do it more quickly and they actually don't have to be an expert at it, that's awesome for me.
Yep. So you'll remember when we first waited on that very long GPT loading screen, we clicked on the order lines view. That created this right here where it said, hey, okay, we're referencing our demo prod order lines table. Default, we're going to trend that using the order at date. It's obviously referencing all the columns that exist in that that view, but it also created a bunch of metrics and descriptions. So it said, hey, we're going to sum the revenue column and get total revenue. We're going to sum the discount column and get discounts. You know, we can even come down here and get COGS, and then, okay, well, we can actually take revenue minus COGS to get gross profit. And we can even calculate gross margin here, and, you know, take
and
revenue minus COGS.
it just
And
like
it just did this on the fly.
The model was like you fed it, you know, information, because I don't remember the beginning of the demo. Do you like drag on tables, or you dragged on a database or something?
It was just literally just a single table. You just click on the table, and then it came in and said, hey, I see a customer ID. You know, it's pretty helpful to have a number of new customers metric in case you're calculating CAC or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So it actually created a filtered down metric for new customers specifically for you.
Gotcha.
You know,
So if
same thing with here.
drag in multiple tables, does it like?
Yeah, you can do. You can do more than one
it'll be like, oh,
table.
I think these join. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So even here, it set up identifiers that make sense for joins. So it was like, hey, order line ID, probably the primary key. Customer ID, foreign key, join that in. Product ID, same thing with order ID, all foreign keys you can join in based on those. So cool. It really understands what's going on and gives you a good place to start. And, you know, for instance here, if you said, hey, you know, actually, you know, revenue, we need to multiply it by some discount. So say I, you know, multiply that by 0.8.
Okay.
This now, since everything else just references this, you know, revenue definition, like down here when we're looking at this, all this gross profit and everything else will be calculated correctly once you fix that core one. So it really makes the tweaking of this really easy. You just have to do it in one spot, and then it will be, you know, fixed everywhere.
Yeah. And I see it actually even correctly got the divide by 0 error, for instance, in that gross margin calculation, which is
yeah. Exactly.
This is bananas.
I would have absolutely
null if divide by 0. Oh yeah, I just did that would have been like I wouldn't have thought of that, and then it would have come up. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I guess I have to go back and fix that. Yeah. This is cool.
And this is kind of like when people say like, well, what if it, you know, well, it makes a mistake, it'll make a mistake, and it's like, yeah, humans never do that.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I've never incorrectly factored in nulls and how nulls work into a case statement and accidentally send half the data I was supposed to. I've never done that.
Okay, so everything should be set up for this giveaway. Let me just click this allow button. And so we should be good to go. So listen, folks, this is your last chance, okay? We are giving away a Datamon card. You can see one here. What this is it is an AI-generated Pokemon card based on your LinkedIn profile. Zenlytic has created these. They are amazing. And if you type hashtag Datamon, all one word, you can see it on the screen here, into the chat. This is your last chance to enter, because I'm going to hit the draw button.
Does this have a for YouTube and LinkedIn, or is this just?
It's YouTube and LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Only one person entered on LinkedIn. So if LinkedIn user wins, that is Richard Ashton, one of our regulars. And so I will give you have another 20 seconds. I know there are many of you watching who have not entered. So this is your chance. And then I'm going to hit this draw button.
All right. And Paul, if I see you're back to back, if you get a bounce, I can wrap up here too.
Yep. I'll hop off.
Okay. Thank you so much,
thank you,
Paul.
Ryan.
Yeah. Awesome conversation. Thank you for
great
joining.
combo. Thank you.
All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
And the winner is
we
Super
won.
Data Brother.
No,
because you posted it.
You get a second Datamon card.
And it looks like it's not working on LinkedIn. Which
I don't think LinkedIn's working. In fact, how about here? I'll assign. I could. Well,
Michael Webb.
We got
congratulations.
Why don't y'all be a bit? How about everybody wins? You get a car.
Everybody wins.
We'll
all right, everybody who entered.
Cards.
So Michael, Richard, and Rory, reach out to. You can reach out to me, or you can contact Ryan directly on LinkedIn. Probably is easiest.
Yeah, for sure. LinkedIn, we'll get you set up.
Yep, and we will get you set up with a Datamon card. I know I've said it like 3 times or 4 times already, but this is truly the coolest thing I've ever gotten at a conference. It's way better than socks. It's way better than hot sauce. You know, it's better than.
I don't know if I'd trust Con hot sauce. I don't know, man.
You know, Paul Mendelsohn got a lot of it. I can recall that. We'll have to ask Paul how that turned out. Very cool. So thank you guys for entering. Reach out to Ryan on LinkedIn to get your Datamon card. And when you get it, post it on LinkedIn and tag us, okay? So we can
Yeah.
see how it turned out, because it's
It is
very
cool.
cool.
That's cool.
All right. So Ryan, sorry we kept you over here. It was just, the conversation was
No
too
problem.
I was too into it and I lost track of time. And so
Mhm.
Yeah, Paul had another call to go to, but luckily he's the brains of the operation, so I can stay here, help close up.
yeah. So
Gotcha.
so thank you so much for joining us. And we will go ahead and yeah, this looks super cool. Where could people find you guys?
Yeah, the best thing is to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. You can find me on Twitter, but I do more data nerd stuff on LinkedIn. So it's just Ryan Janssen, Zenlytic. You'll find me. Paul Blankley, who's bounced, but you can connect with him too. You can go to the website zenlytic.com, but it's funner just to chat. So just reach out anytime.
Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and any last words, Eric? That was awesome.
Yeah, no, that was cool. I wish I had it right now.
No kidding. One last plug. Today's sponsor, Digital Hive. Of course, we have to thank them for their generous sponsorship of today's show. Digital Hive is an analytics catalog that lets you pull all your BI and analytics assets into one place to make it searchable and combinable. You can take all the best parts of all the best dashboards and form them like Voltron into one super dashboard that is interactive and gives you. You know what the reality is? Every dashboard, not every, but almost every dashboard has like 2 charts that anybody cares about. And the rest of them are just window dressing. This lets you actually pull all those great charts into one place. And that's one of the things I like about it. And makes all these assets discoverable to your end users across BI tools. That's the key. You can combine Tableau with Power BI, with who knows what. Of course, if you're at a large company, you know that you probably have a bazillion BI tools, and your end users are always having to look all over to pull their insights together. Digital Hive lets you do that for them. So you get all the best stuff in one place. And thank you for their generous sponsorship of today's show. That was a very enlightening conversation and very cool tech that those guys have developed.
We always talk about LLMs and how it interacts with BI. It was nice to see it.
Yes, exactly. What a cool thing that they've built. All right, so we're 7 minutes over. This is the longest we've run over, I think, ever on this show.
I'm off of work today, so normally I kind of like remind and push things along, but I don't have to get back to work today, so I don't care. So we can go over. That's fine.
Well, I get too excited. I stop watching the clock. And so, listen, we want to thank you all for coming today. What a cool episode.
Thank you so much.
Reach out to Zenlytic to test it out. I'm just super impressed with the tool. Not just with the tool, though, but how they've answered some of the
questions,
the most pressing questions for this technology in the data space, right? Very well thought out. I think you can tell, that they were in the space before ChatGPT came out and already had some expertise to bring to it, instead of kind of rushing in and trying to participate in the gold rush. And
instead of trying to just paste it on top of what they already have.
Exactly. Very impressive. So thank you for joining us today. As always, we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.